Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendon Traxler.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Colonize the Ocean, the podcast. I am one of your two hosts, Adam Jewell, and with me, as always, is my good friend and the other co-host and the founder of Atlantic Sea Colony, Brendon Traxler. Brendon, how are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you, Adam.
It's been a while since we recorded. We kind of did some pre-recording to try to get ahead of the holidays and have stuff ready. So this is kind of the first time we've done this, and it seems like over a month, so
It has been
like
over a month.
Yeah, so it's like the first podcast of the year recording wise. So we kind of talked about in one of the previous episodes that we were gonna do an episode that was a little bit more fun. Not that the other ones aren't fun, but you know what I mean. Where we wanted to talk about some entertainment value with underwater habitats and oceanic type structures and all that jazz. With right now in the theaters, a movie Underwater came out, so it's kind of like the big hype in the aquatic type community, where there's a lot of people that wanted to see it based on that. So we kind of had a thought that we would do an episode about underwater structures in entertainment, in movies, in video games, in cartoons, whatever it might be. So we're going to go through that. Now, here's the deal. You know a lot more about these movies, A, because you've been into this kind of culture for a while, and you are older than me, so you've seen some of these movies, and I haven't really seen any of these, so you're going to have to explain some of them to me, and I want you to be able to tell me like where you rank them as far as like how good are they, and do they seem realistic when it comes to physics and just getting everything right scientifically. Does that sound all right?
Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to watch some of these, is all I've got to say. The fact that you have YouTube and you have the internet and you don't know anything about some of these movies, some of these are classics, and it disappoints me a little bit. That's all I got to say.
Well, I know, and that's part of what this is like where you rank them and stuff. Maybe that's how I'll go down this list. So we'll go with it with that.
Oh, okay.
So we got a pretty decent list here. So starting with The Abyss. Tell me about The Abyss.
It's probably like the number one movie you have to watch. We should have probably ended with this one, but it's just such a good movie. You can't get around it. When you talk about underwater habitats, I think it is always in the forefront or in the top 3 or 4 of any movie that has them. It came out, I think, in '89, I think it was. And it's probably one of the only ones that completely revolves 90% of that movie. It takes place in the underwater habitat. Basically, and we'll put just a sidetrack here a little bit. We will put links in the show notes and stuff like that to, trailers or intros or something like that for everything we're talking about here. So just FYI. But no, The Abyss, that's about these guys on an experimental oil underwater mobile habitat. That's basically an oil derrick underwater. And the government, there's a sub crash, and then the government commandeers it, and they find aliens and all this stuff. I mean, a lot of these are just going to be spoilers, but if you haven't seen The Abyss by now, I mean, I don't know. It's almost 30 some years ago. So anyway, but no, it's, as far as the design and everything, it all works. It deals a lot with pressure, and they deal with decompression and everything that you should have to deal with was dealt with. Some fun facts about that movie too is that it was all filmed underwater, which became a pain, and that even Ed Harris, who's the main star of it, refuses to talk about the movie to this day because he hated that movie so much from the filming aspect of it. So So I mean, across the board, it's a pretty accurate. I mean, except for the aliens and stuff along those lines. But who knows? Once again, they're dealing with aliens miles underwater. There could be aliens miles underwater. We don't know. But that being said, everything else for the thing is pretty accurate. That is a 2 thumbs up. If we're going to give some kind of grading scale here, I don't know. But no, it's a really good movie. I implore everybody to see that movie.
And The Abyss is kind of a movie that gets talked about as just being one of just a great film regardless. I mean, we're kind of talking about the types of movies that involve underwater structures and underwater habitats, where The Abyss, it's just, even if you take that aside, has been ranked as just an incredible movie. I haven't seen it, but I know that it gets brought up in a lot of discussions.
Yeah, no, I mean, it talks about, social issues. It's not just a sci-fi movie, because there's a lot of thought put into the social messages behind it and stuff along those lines. James Cameron, the director of The Abyss, it was almost a passion thing for him, because he loves the ocean so much. He has actually, a couple of years ago, traveled to the Mariana Trench, to the deepest point in the ocean, in a submarine that he had built. So it's the first time in been about 50, 60 years since anybody had been down that far. So just a little fun fact there, that's how much that The Abyss tied into his real life too.
Okay, so the next one, it's still in theaters, or by the time this comes out, maybe it's on its way out of theaters. And you recently saw it, so I guess you can't give away too many spoilers about it, but it's kind of a big hit right now, Underwater. Tell me about that. Yeah,
once again, it was one of those things where, it looked good on the trailer. It was one of those, first of all, it's coming out in January, and not too many good movies come out in January or February usually, so it was going to be, it looked like a horror movie type of thing, so I went and saw it. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely go see it again. I will definitely buy it when it comes out. Like I said, I can't say too much about it, but the underwater habitat, even though it's ginormous for being at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, which is 7 miles down. So there's that. I mean, the amount of money and physics and everything it takes to get something that big built down there is astronomical. So that's a little far-fetched. And a lot of the stuff that takes place in the movie is pretty far-fetched. But the suits, the engineering aspects of it, a lot of the stuff goes into it, is plausible. But overall, it's a good movie. I mean, it's definitely one I would recommend seeing. Do you need to see in the theater? Whatever. If you got the time and money, definitely go see it. I'm sure most things look bigger on the big screen. And the reason I don't want to say too much about it, because I think we'll discuss it in the next movie we're going to talk about a little bit, because to me, the next movie is very similar to this one. And so I'll talk a little bit more about it, I think.
Well, then we'll just roll right into it. And I had to ask you how to pronounce this, because that's how out of the loop I was when it came to this. Leviathan. So you say, is there some similarities between that and Underwater?
I felt there was. I mean, it seemed like a lot of the suits looked the same. A lot of the scenes were even very similar. There's a scene in there where they're all in their deep suits, and they're on a platform, and they're going down underwater together. And it's like, oh man, I know I've seen that somewhere. And I got home and thinking, oh, it's Leviathan. And it's just the whole premise of them working underwater, and underwater construction is, and they're all blue collar workers underwater working in this habitat, and something transpires and they have to figure out and escape from it. It was just a lot of similarities there. The difference was that Leviathan, looking at it, you can tell it wasn't filmed underwater for a lot of parts. It was filmed just like a foggy set to make it look like it's underwater. So, the filming techniques and stuff like that aren't the best, but if we're putting that aside, again, the structural aspects of it, they deal with a lot of the same truths, I guess you could say, that you would deal with underwater. It is, once again, it's a little far-fetched, but so is Underwater. And all these are to an extent. That's why I still rank The Abyss as by far probably the best one we'll talk about, just because of that.
Well, and it comes down to, with it being Hollywood, I mean, if they have to substitute facts and reality with entertainment, they're going to go that route. They're not going to keep reality in if they know they can exaggerate something to make it more entertaining, which, I mean, I get it. It's a business, but at the same time, there's people like you and I that kind of are into the realisticness of certain, I guess, physics and aspects of movies.
Right. And before you move on to the next one, as I'm sitting here, we're recording this, I forgot one to put in the notes, and I can't believe how I forgot this one, but The Meg. I mean, it came out last year.
Fairly recent.
Yeah. But it had an underwater habitat that, once again, was a believable underwater habitat. It was attached to almost like an old oil derrick, old rig out in the ocean. And it was constructed, obviously, it was, once again, as a huge underwater habitat. So the cost and stuff like that was astronomical. But the believability of it, once again, was fairly decent. And so, yeah, it was a decent one. I bought it. I enjoyed it that much, even though it was, kind of a dumb movie at times. But still, the structural habitat, the look and everything is believable, and I'd stay there.
So we just put in a bonus one in there. Yeah. We just put Meg in there, and I got to thinking about that too after we started. I was wondering if we left that one off for a reason, or if we just didn't think about it. But yeah,
I'm sure there's several on here that I completely forgot about or missed too. I'm sure people will
always do a part 2 someday.
We can do that, yeah.
Okay, so moving on, we're going to roll into Sphere. This is the one that I hear a lot about as well. Tell me something about it.
Oh, have you now? No, it's all right. It's definitely a big sci-fi movie. It's kind of weird, when you're watching it. But they've got, just because of the sci-fi elements of it, it makes it a different type of movie. I don't think it did too well, but it had some big names in it. And once again, it's standard underwater habitat. Structurally, they don't really go too much in, if I remember right. It's been quite a while since I've seen this one. I don't go too much into the design element of this underwater habitat, but just except for you see some airlocks and which all factual, and the pressures and stuff like that they all deal with seem to be pretty accurate. So for the most part, it's a pretty solid movie as well.
All right, and this one seems, like I said in the beginning, I haven't seen any of these movies, and the next couple ones are going to be ones that you're going to be like, really, you haven't seen that? But I have heard about all of them, and I've heard a lot of things about a lot of them. So the next one is one of those Deep Blue Sea. That one's not terribly old, right?
I mean, I don't know, it's probably 10, 15 years old at least.
It's
not Cool J in it, so I mean.
Oh, so I mean, it has to be somewhat old, but not necessarily as old as some of these other ones.
Yeah, about the height of his powers.
The height of LL Cool J. Okay, gotcha.
But anyway, this one is kind of cool. This one is again a sci-fi element, but the habitat was pretty cool. I mean, it was a hybrid where it started off above the ocean, and you come into a boat, and you could go down elevator shaft or stairs or whatever like that, multiple levels. So structurally is pretty accurate. They dealt with, the fact if the pressure got off, how it would flood, and they had a moon pool. So a lot of the elements that come into play with some of these other ones, I felt that it was a believable habitat that I could see being built today. As bad as this movie, I think there's a Deep Blue Sea 2 I have not seen yet, so I don't know if there's a habitat in that one or not, but I have not heard anything good about it. Maybe it didn't get made. Maybe it's a rumor. I don't know. Anyway, but the point is that the habitat in what we're grading on the habitat, not the movie itself, I would give this habitat a pass. I enjoyed it. Once again, almost all these movies are shows I own, so I have seen them multiple times. So yeah, it was good. It was good.
Okay, so the next one is one that I think a lot of people would make fun of me for not seeing. Now, I seen Jaws 1 like as a kid, and that was like 20 some years ago. So I didn't see any of the other Jaws, so I had to ask why we put Jaws 3 on here, because like I said, I haven't seen that one. So tell me, why is Jaws 3 on here?
Jaws 3 is a horrible movie. I mean, I like the Jaws franchise. The Jaws 3 is horrible. It's actually called Jaws 3D, but I didn't even want to give it the dignity of having that 3D logo when I typed it in the show notes here. But it's just an all-around bad movie. They, we'll talk about the cinematics of it. They tried to force 3D before its time, and it looked bad. But the habitat-wise is basically in a lagoon. So, we've seen that with Jules Undersea Lodge. It's in a lagoon. It works. And this one is more of some of the stuff like some of the aquariums have done today, where it's got like a branch that comes off into the lagoon type of thing. So this one is completely believable. It's almost already been done to some extent. It has been done. It's just like a building that sticks out in the lagoon where people can walk through clear tubes, see the environment and stuff along those lines. So from a technical standpoint, it passes. But if you haven't seen the movie, I don't blame you. And it's not one I would rush out to see just for this slight habitat. So,
if it just happens to be on TV, maybe give it a watch, but don't go out of your way to see it.
Pretty much.
And even then, you can get up and leave and not be not miss out on much.
If you've seen the other Jaws movies, you might as well see it to fit in the whole 4 Jaws movies that are out there.
Oh, there's 4 of them?
Yeah, man. Jaws: The Revenge is number 4.
Oh, yeah. That's how out of the loop I am with this stuff. I knew there was 3, but I didn't know there was a 4th one. So, okay, well, that one must be even worse then.
Yeah, I liked it.
Well, all right, fine. Okay, so here's a weird one that I guess I wasn't expecting to show up on the list. James Bond, The Spy Who Loved Me.
Oh, yeah. So this one, the villain had this sweet underwater habitat. And actually, I remember as a kid being in awe at this thing. I was like, I want that thing. I want that. And as a kid, I grew up on Jacques Cousteau and stuff like that. So the underwater, and it was a passion of mine anyway. And then you got this villain with this sweet underwater lair. They had these legs and it can pop up out of the water. And it reminded me a lot of the from the Justice League, the bad guys place. What's that thing called?
Was it the Hall? No, it's not the Hall of Justice. Legion of Doom.
No.
Is it Legion? No, Legion of Doom is wrestling.
Yeah.
It's there's Hall of Justice and something of Doom.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
But anyway, it kind of reminded me of that, even though it doesn't look like that, but for some reason in my head as a child, it reminded me of that, and it stuck with me all these years. But anyway, it's just some really rich dude who's got this underwater habitat that's basically his own private lair house type of thing. It's just really cool. It's cool. Is it technically sound? I mean, we discussed in one of our episodes who's one of the guys who I should put this in the notes, but had built his own with his own money, built underwater habitats, and it kind of one of his resembled a small version of that. So yeah, I mean, I guess if you had enough money and you wanted to build the thing, you could do it. It had some pretty large glass or acrylic pieces to it that cost a pretty penny, but I mean, maybe. I don't know. If you get enough money, you can make anything worse. I guess if he was some filthy rich bad guy, but I'd be a bad guy if I had something like that.
Well, that's a little foreshadowing, probably. Huh?
Yeah.
So we're gonna do a couple of TV shows here. Now, here's one that I know you were a huge fan of: SeaQuest DSV. So, this ran through the '90s, I believe, and it I don't know. It was, from everything you've told me about it, and I haven't seen it. Once again, I haven't seen much of these. I know you are just very geeky when it comes to SeaQuest. So what is it about SeaQuest you love? I
mean, that ranks up there with James Bond, The Spy Who Loved Me, and The Abyss in my book, because all 3 of those were very instrumental in my passion for the ocean and underwater and stuff like that. Obviously, The Spy Who Loved Me came around first, then The Abyss, and then SeaQuest. And SeaQuest was when I was in high school. I mean, I don't know, I was 14, 15, something like that. And yeah, it was just really ahead of its time, even though looking back, it was a mirror of another TV show from back in the 50s or 60s. And obviously it's built around a submarine, but there's tons of episodes where they're in underwater habitats or resorts or prisons or whatever. So it's supposed to be set currently. It starts off in the year 2018 and goes up to the year 2032 in the timeline. So right now, supposedly there's underwater habitats all over the place, mining ones. And it's just different design styles and different ideas about how it worked. It was just cool. I mean, it dealt with, they were pretty accurate from the standpoint of obviously looking in the future. They had giant dome underwater habitats, and which once again, it's cost issues and structural issues are astronomical. But once again, you got enough money to throw at it, you can probably make it work. But there's several of them, especially the mining community ones or some of the smaller ones that were cool. And they dealt with one episode even dealt with a habitat that was based around an internet node where all the cables underwater fed to it. So I mean, there was some stuff that even though it missed the mark on a lot as for portraying what the future may look like, I think that there are some aspects that will come to play in some level or another, but obviously not in their timeline since this should already be happening now. But as I beat around the bush here, it was a good show for its time. I enjoyed it. I still go back and watch certain episodes now.
It's kind of one of those things where, based off of like how you've talked about it, you could almost compare it in a sense to like some of the Star Trek series, because a lot of them, like while they were old, like some of the older Star Trek series, and I guess you could even say like, a lot of the sci-fi stuff from 80s, 90s, like they kind of had a grasp on what was to come that kind of seemed far-fetched, but now like a lot of the technology they used in these like futuristic space shows and stuff, it's stuff that we're using now, which back then would have just seemed crazy, and it seemed like it was only possible hundreds of years in the future. But I mean, we're walking around with basically the world in our palm with our smartphones and stuff. So I mean, a lot of these shows, whether it's SeaQuest, Star Trek, stuff like that, has kind of foreshadowed a lot of the stuff we're doing now, and SeaQuest kind of mirrors what we're kind of working on now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think they took a lot of cues from Star Trek from that perspective. Star Trek's had a pretty good list of things that have come true that they were having, and same thing with SeaQuest. Who knows if they borrowed from Star Trek or is their own ideas, but obviously that was both those shows were the older ones were pre-internet days, so didn't have the benefit of that knowledge. But yeah, I'd say your statement's very true.
Now, here's one of my favorite ones. Yeah, this one I have, and I love this one, and this is one I have seen. It was a cartoon that aired early 2000s, and I don't remember when it finally quit airing, but it was Sealab 2021. I absolutely loved this show. Now, Sealab 2021 is actually a spoof off of Sealab 2020, which we kind of put in a different list of honorable mentions, because that was like a cartoon that ran like probably in the 60s, 70s. And basically they took all the characters, animations and stuff and just kind of, I don't know what the word is, toyed with it and put new voices and just, I don't know. It's not for kids. I mean, it is an adult cartoon, but absolutely hilarious. And what's your input on Sealab 2021?
I mean, it's a funny cartoon. I mean, as far as they got this cheaply drawn underwater habitat that Pod 6 is always getting destroyed in. I mean, I
in flames, by the way, yeah, underwater. Yeah.
So, I mean, it should have probably fallen under honorable mentions just because of what it is. But once again, if you're in that type of humor and you just want some underwater humor, yeah, it's a good show. Once again, I enjoy it, but yeah.
We often ask each other if you'd put your brain inside a robot body. And that's something that we've stolen from Sealab 2020 on one of the most memorable episodes of that show.
I think it's the first episode too, wasn't it?
It's one of the very first ones, if not the first one. Okay, so now we actually have a Vigima game that you've played a lot of and I've played some of, and we actually talked for a little bit about like doing like a Twitch stream, and we just haven't really been consistent with it or haven't started yet, but we talked about playing Subnautica, and from what I can tell, and I'm going to let you jump on and fill in the gaps here, but Subnautica, the very beginning, you're on a spaceship that crash lands on a oceanic planet that you're just in kind of like a life pod, but then you got to go scavenge around this ocean that you crashed in, find supplies and build stuff and kind of create your own habitat to live off of. Now, I haven't gotten very far in the game, so this is where you can pick up and add on to that.
Well, I mean, the basic premise of the thing you can talk about as much as I can. And basically, like you said, it's an ocean. Basically, it looks like 99% of the planet's ocean, from what we can tell, and you got to swim around and build a habitat for you to live in. And so, it's just a fun game. There's lots of pros and cons to it. I wish you were able to control the size of the habitat as far as how big the cylinders are and the walkways and stuff like that. I wish there's a little more control there. But for an entry-level game, it's a cool game. They're always adding updates. They've had a new expansion pack come out and stuff along those lines. So it's fun. You have to deal with pressure. If you go too deep and you don't build enough pressure halls and stuff like that, you can have cracks and leaks. If stuff runs into it, you can get damage. You can build submarines. You can do a lot of different stuff in it. So it's a pretty cool game.
So with the video game category, you've played it, I haven't, and we've had a lot of people comment about it on our Facebook page that you can find at www.facebook.com/AtlantaSeaColony. That Bioshock. Apparently, we kind of remind them of stuff from Bioshock. Now, tell me why there's a connection there.
Because it's underwater. That's about it. Because Bioshock is actually a very fanciful, basically city that this rich guy built underwater, and it looks like skyscrapers and stuff along those lines. Sure, maybe the technology will get there in a while, and you can build that looks like that. But it's very retro, look of it from the golden age. So that's about as far as it goes. It's just almost all your gameplay takes place in these buildings underwater. So you may walk by a window and you look outside and there's the ocean, stuff along those lines. But yeah, your whole existence in this game is exploring and fighting in this underwater skyscrapers, pretty much.
Now we do have one unseen honorable mention.
Well, and there's one more game too that really, No Man's Sky, even though it's a space game, they did put out a big update and you can build underwater now in it. So I haven't played it. I know it's out there. I've seen some cool screenshots and videos of it. I'm not sure how accurate it is or what kind of stuff you can do with it. But I do know that No Man's Sky also does give you that. And I think there's some other games out there. I just can't think of them off the top of my head, or I couldn't find them when I was doing some research.
Yeah, with indie developers all over the place, I'm sure there's like a lot of games that could have made this list, or, but in my old age, Brendon, I just don't have a lot of time for video games anymore.
Yeah. Sure.
So one more other honorable mention, like we just said with No Man's Sky. But this is a show that you said you've seen a trailer for, but neither one of us have seen it. But there is a show called Hello Down There. What can you get from that?
So yeah, when I was doing research, I saw this and I was like, I've never heard of this. So I watched it. And it's actually, if anyone has seen it, I'd be curious to get your feedback on the thing. But it looks like it was made in the 60s. Around that whole time, it has very much the campy feel of like Gilligan's Island, I Dream of Jeannie, all those type of shows. Basically, it's a family that lives in an underwater habitat, and they've got a pet dolphin, or pet seal, I guess it was, sea lion. And
two completely different animals that you just mixed up there.
Yes. Oh, well, dolphin too. I just 3 different animals, really. But my point is, no, it looks like a funny, campy 60s show that I'd be curious to find out more about. But once again, that's about all I know about it. So if there's anybody that knows more and they want to comment, cool. I'm going to try to find some more episodes and watch them just because I'm curious more than anything. The habitat, once again, looks very 60s. And, a lot of this stuff come out of the 60s. You're looking at James Bond and you're looking at Hello Down There, Sealab 2020. And it was all that is at the same time that was a big space push. There was the big underwater push with Cousteau doing all his stuff too. So it makes sense that all this stuff popped up around there because it was BuzzFeed material, I guess, back then. So
before we end this episode, I have 3 categories that I want you to, like, if you had to do an award show for this, and we'll include I guess we'll just exclude the video games just because that has some variation to it. So take into account your cartoons, your TV shows, your movies here. Now, here's the 3 categories, just so you understand where I'm going with. So I want you to give me what movie had the coolest habitat. Give me the movie that was the most entertaining. And then give me the movie that was just all around, like just the most realistic, all around movie. So 3 categories. So start with 1. Which one had the coolest habitat?
So for me, or you think just in general?
For you, your opinion.
Yeah, because I say aesthetically, all these are very different to extent. So
aesthetics are objective. So yeah, that's all opinion based.
Probably the Abyss. I mean, really, the Abyss could be easy answer for all 3 of these, and I'm trying to make it diversified a little bit. So I don't know. That James Bond one was really slick too. Oh man, maybe I don't know. And then SeaQuest had tons of different ones, so you had a variety to choose from there. This is tough. I will take SeaQuest just because there's a diversity and there's different ones in there I could choose from.
All right.
Even though my heart tells me to say the Abyss, but just for the sake of spicing it up a little bit.
All right. So the one that has the most entertainment value, whether it's realistic or not, the most entertaining of these movies or shows.
Again, that's very, you got campy James Bond, or you got, more realistic other movies. Underwater is pretty entertaining. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and it was really good. But then, man, The Abyss is just such a good movie. I feel like I'm just beating a dead horse here over the whole The Abyss thing. But Deep Blue Sea was good. I say it was just so good movie. Let's. What was my third category? So
the third was like the most realistic. Are you still going with The Abyss?
For number 3 or 2? For number 2.
For 3.
Or for number 2, let's just say. I'll say The Abyss for number 2.
Okay. So The Abyss was the most entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to go with SeaQuest for the most, or your favorite habitat, because it had a variety of cool ones.
Yeah.
Now, what was the most realistic, in your opinion? Which one had like the most facts straight?
Jaws 3, I think, obviously would take that. But I'm not giving Jaws 3 anything. So, I'm gonna either say Deep Blue Sea or the Abyss, because I could see both of those. Well, the one from the Abyss actually was built and used. So I mean, yeah, it has to win because it actually has been built and worked, and they worked in it, and it was submerged in water. So
the Abyss takes 2 awards home tonight.
I guess so. Even though, I mean, I don't think you could drop it in 1,000 foot of water. It did work as an underwater habitat. So yeah.
So there you have it, guys. We just gave you guys some weekend entertainment movies, whatever, for you guys to go over, some shows to check out. And with the internet the way it is, I'm sure you can find these movies either on like any of the movie streaming services or like the movie rental services. I prefer using the Google Play one, but there's a lot of people that use other ones. It's fine. So go check these movies out. I think Brendon's going to really push that you guys go see at least The Abyss, if anything.
Well, yeah, and there's actually 2 different versions of The Abyss. There's like the standard...
Oh, gosh.
Well, there's the standard movie version, and there's like an extended version that has, I think, like a half hour more footage and stuff like that. And obviously, if you're going to do it, you got to watch the full one.
All right, guys. So if you think that we left anything off of this list, please come join us on our social medias and talk to us about it. You can find us on Facebook at Atlantis Sea Colony. You can find us on Instagram at Atlantis Sea Colony. You can find us on Twitter at guess what? Atlantis Sea Colony.
Actually,
we're also... Well, if you look up Atlantis Sea Colony, it will pop up.
Okay, fair
Yes,
enough.
it's like I think it's Atlantis Sea Call.
Yes.
So, okay, you know what? Oh.
Just go to our website, and all the links are right there.
Yeah,
too.
that's fair too. You can go to either one of our websites. You can go to www.atlantisseacolony, or you can go to www.colonizetheocean, and you can check us out there. And also, real quick before we call it a day, we have a Patreon account that you can go to, and if you're feeling generous and helping us out with the Atlantis Sea Colony Project, you can go to www.patreon.com/Atlantis Sea Colony, and all of this stuff will be in the show notes. And once again, guys, thank you for joining us for an episode. Brendon, you got anything to tack on?
No, but yeah, definitely go watch some of these movies. Hopefully you got a better track record than Adam does on these things, and you've seen more than he has. But,
I'll try to catch up by the next episode. How about that?
Cool. But thank you guys for listening, as always.